Hello, welcome back to my channel, and this is a big book unhaul. As you can see, I just rearranged my bookshelves and I have a whole other video on rearranging and reorganizing my bookshelves just because I have to accommodate for a smaller apartment and I am reading a lot right now, so I'm getting a lot of books in, but I need to get some books out, and so that is what we're doing today. Let's get into it. The first unhaul is Simon's Cat. This is actually a really cool book. It's just a book of all kinds of drawings of Simon's cat. And a friend of mine gave this to me when I was in my teens. So this was a really sweet gift, but I never look into this book. And it's probably more of a coffee table book, but we have no space for a coffee table and I have not had space for a coffee table ever. So it has to go. The next book is a German book, but it is a translation of The Last Lecture. I don't know if you guys know it, but it's this very short memoir of a professor that finds out he's dying from cancer, and he wrote this very short book. And we actually have the English version of this in a slightly nicer version, a slightly nicer book, so I'm just getting rid of the German version. Next we have Wüstenblume by Waris de and this is also a German book, but I think this was translated also into English. And this is about genital mutilation of women, and it was very inspiring, but I recently just found this in my basement and I never knew I had it, so I figure I don't have to put it back into my collection, but still a very big recommend, something I found very interesting in my teens. Then The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. This was one of my favorite books when I was in my teens and I haven't read it since, and I also found this in the basement because I was going through some old boxes. I knew that I had some books in there and I wanted to see if there was anything in there that I wanted to keep, but I decided I don't necessarily need to keep this, but this is a very good memory to see this book. Then I have Ilias and Odyssey by Homer. I am just getting rid of this because I read this once and I didn't make it all the way through, and I've since read The Song of Achilles and I figure it's way more accessible for me to read like the modern version of things, so I'm probably going to try and read more modern versions of this. But this is also not the prettiest edition. If I ever want to keep one in my collection, I want it to be a little nicer than this one because this one's just very basic, which is obviously fine. Next I have The Woodlanders by Thomas Hardy, and this was one of the Facebook buys that I bought in the big collection with these books, but I have since found that I'm probably not going to read this, so I am giving it away. Then I have Chick. This is also a German book, and this was also a YA that I really enjoyed reading in my teens. I just really liked this book. Now that I think about it, I think my boyfriend really likes this, so you know what? I'm going to put this on a maybe pile for him to check whether he wants to give up that book or not. So the other book is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I really like Brave New World though, so I'm going to sort this one out, unhaul this, and then order it in this edition because I really liked my classic dystopian novels. So I ordered it in the Everyman's Library edition and it will be on this bookshelf then, and I'm just gonna unhaul this because I don't think this is a very pretty book, and I don't know, for the books that I really like and that I'm going to reread several times in the future, I don't want to keep the not as pretty covers. Next I have The Memory Keeper's Daughter, and I barely remember this. That's all I can say. I barely remember this. I don't know what it's about, so I figure it has to go. And then I have Sommerdiebe by Truman Capote. So this is a translated Truman Capote, which I just don't need in my life. If I'm going to read Truman Capote, I prefer to do it in English, and I think this was a gift by someone who knew that I liked Truman Capote and I really, really appreciated it. However, like I said, it's a German version and I don't need a German version. I don't need a translated version of something that I could easily read in its original language, so this is also going. Then I have Der Besuch der alten Dame by Dürrenmatt, and this was actually on my Abitur exam, which is like the A-levels of Germany or the high school level. I don't know. It's like the end exam that you have to take at the end of school, and this was one of the books that I had to read for my German exam. I can let this go. I don't mind letting that go. Then I have Nachtzug nach Lissabon, and I know that a lot of people love this book, and this is also translated. There's probably an English translated version. I know that some people absolutely loved this. I really remember it, and that's when I ordered it, obviously. But I have to say, didn't get into it, can't remember anything about the plot, and I remember just being like, okay, you know, it's fine, but nothing special. The next book here is Old Goriot by Honoré de Balzac. That's how you pronounce it, I don't know. Also a book I'm never gonna read, if I'm being honest with myself. I have The Woman in White here by William Wilkie Collins. I actually did read this. I read this in this book, but I have decided I don't need to keep it. It just didn't impress me. And then over here I have Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. Did not read this, read a synopsis online, don't think I'm going to be reading it, so I'm letting it go. Then I have Gulliver's Channel Travels by Jonathan Swift, which is obviously a very big book, and I actually read this a while ago, not with this book, but with a different book. I read it from a library book, and I just don't think I'm going to reread it. That's all that I'm gonna say. So these are just gonna go. Henry James, The Princess Cassimissima. I DNF'd this. I started reading it and then DNF'd it, and so I'm probably not going to get into it again, so I'm getting rid of it. This hurts my heart because these are just so pretty. These books are so gorgeous, but you know what? Sometimes you just have to let it go. So the next book is Fully Functioning Human Almost by Melanie Murphy. This was like a YouTuber book. She's still a creator that I follow. I actually still like her content. She does a lot of vlogs and lifestyle and things. And this book, I just didn't like it a lot. It's more like an advice thing and stuff that happened to her, and she's obviously gone through quite a bit, and so she could write this book, but I didn't really resonate with this particular book. This one is Alte Weiße Männer by Sophie Passmann. I just read this actually this year, but I just didn't like it that much. I just didn't think it was a very inspiring read. And Die Bücherdiebin by Markus Zusak. So I actually found out in the meantime that this book was originally written in English, I think. And I really love this book, and I bought a new edition. So I bought a hardback of this just because I thought, you know what, this is something I really like. This is something I'm going to want to reread several times. So I'd rather reread it in original language, and then I purchased a hardback cover of this just to have it nicer in my collection. The next book I'm unhauling is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer, mostly because I just don't think I need to keep this. It was a really interesting reread. These three, the Twilight Saga back then, my father accidentally gave away. He accidentally donated them, and in the meantime I'm like, you know what, I'm not mad, I'm not gonna reread these. So it was fun rereading this, and it was fun to look at this, just because we all needed to be entertained last year, but I don't think I'm going to be rereading this, so that book can go. The next one I am unhauling is Bridge of Clay by Markus Zusak. So this is the author that wrote The Book Thief that I just showed you, and so I was really anticipating his new read. Honestly, I just didn't like it. It was just very long. I don't know, I couldn't get into this book. I did finish reading it, I didn't DNF it, but I just couldn't get into it, couldn't get into the story, couldn't get into the moral of the story. And because he had written The Book Thief, which I just loved so much, I don't know, I expected something different, but I just didn't like it, so I'm not keeping it. I'm being very strict. So next I'm getting rid of this Sherlock Holmes Greatest Cases by Arthur Conan Doyle, and not because I don't like Sherlock Holmes. I love Sherlock Holmes and I read these in my teens, but because I would like to get a nicer version of this. This one is really old, and there are some pages coming apart, and I don't know, I don't like all of the stories in here, so I'm just going to look for a nicer hardback of these stories, because I just want to be more conscious of the collection that I'm building, and I think I enjoy rereads more if they're nicer editions, just because I don't want to keep having the feeling that I'm like almost going to break the book, because it's a paperback. The next book I'm hauling is The Freedom Writer's Diary. This is, I have an interesting relationship to this story. So this is a story about a teacher that was in a classroom in a mostly Black or Hispanics, Latinx neighborhood. She helps them with this diary project, and then she finds out how bad their lives actually are. And I loved it at the time. I read this as a teen and I was absolutely in love with this story, but then after a while I kind of figured, This is kind of white saviory. So I don't think I'm ever gonna reread this book, so I think I'm just gonna let it go and like, you know, let it be a great memory of me as a kid, but I don't have to reread it because it is very much white saviorism. The next book I'm gonna get rid of is Tatort Zürich by Leo Müller, and actually these are books given to me by my old roommate's dad, so he wrote this book, but I didn't like this one as much. I have another book of his and I'm keeping that. I didn't like this one as much, so I am unhauling this. And we are still not done. We are still not done. The next thing I'm unhauling is my Latin-German dictionary. Yes, I have kept this all these years. I needed this in school because Germans have Latin in school. And I truly still do enjoy having a dictionary, a Latin-German dictionary in the household. But in times of Google, people usually grab Google instead of this. Then we have The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and this was a purchase I made because of Gilmore Girls. There's no other way to put this, because very often they would like mention certain books and then I would be like, oh, that sounds kind of funky, why don't I order that? And so I ordered this, and you know what, it just, we're unhauling it. So this is another Truman Capote translated book, and I'm unhauling this for the same reason I'm unhauling the other Truman Capote that was translated. The next book is The Working Woman's Handbook. I actually really like this. This is written by Phoebe Lovat. I think this is UK based, and it was kind of nice to read, but I didn't really feel like I needed to keep this because I don't really look into it anymore, so I'm going to get rid of it. Next book is Nietzsche by Rüdiger Safransky. This is a biography about Nietzsche, and actually this is not my book. So I have kept this book for several years. I have been trying to give it back to someone, but they have now officially left the continent, and I don't think they're going to want this book because they're not missing it, so I am unhauling it here. I am not going to keep it in my collection any longer. So the next two books are Sigmund Freud's books, Das Ich und das Es und Abriss der Psychoanalyse. I thought it would be interesting to read these as a teen, so I bought them, I think, in my early 20s. And I did read some of it, so it's not like I didn't read these at all. I did read certain parts of these and went through them and thought some things were very interesting. I also used a lot of online resources to read these, so I didn't like read these without help, basically. But I'm not going to be rereading them. That's just the way I'm gonna put this. I don't think I'm ever going to pick these up ever again, because in the meantime, back then, yes, we had the internet back then, but back then there weren't as many resources as there were today. So I'm going to unhaul these, and that concludes the unhaul. So 31 books in total we have unhauled today. It is the most I have ever unhauled, but as you can see, it's not a lot of fiction, so it's more very, very old classics that I just have to admit to myself that I'm never going to read them. Also books that I may have read and that I just don't connect with, so, or books where I say, you know what, I would like to have a nicer edition. So this was not your big fiction unhaul, but more of a mixed unhaul situation. So I hope this was fun to watch. Let me know if you're unhauling any books as of late, and let me know which books you have been unhauling, and I will see you soon.